hallelujah, hallelujah. For who you are, Yahuwah, our great power. We sing the highest praise to you. For who you are, Yahuwah, our great power. We sing the highest praise to you. For who you are, Yahuwah, our great power. We sing the highest praise to you. For who you are, Yahuwah, our great power. We sing the highest praise to you. Oh, we sing hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Oh, we sing hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Oh, we sing hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. For who you are, Yahuwah, our great power. We sing the highest praise to you. For who you are, Yahuwah, our great power. We sing the highest praise to you. For who you are, Yahuwah, our great power. We sing the highest praise to you. For who you are, Yahuwah, our great power. We sing the highest praise to you. Oh, we sing hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Oh, we sing hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Oh, we sing hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Oh, we sing hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. For who you are, Yahuwah, our great power. We sing the highest praise to you. For who you are, Yahuwah, our great power. We sing the highest praise to you. For who you are, Yahuwah, our great power. We sing the highest praise to you. For who you are, Yahuwah, our great power. We sing the highest praise to you. Oh, we sing hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Oh, we sing hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Oh, we sing hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Oh, we sing hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Oh, we sing hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. For who you are, Yahuwah, our great power. We sing the highest praise to you. For who you are, Yahuwah, our great power. We sing the highest praise to you. For who you are, Yahuwah, our great power. We sing the highest praise to you. For who you are, Yahuwah, our great power. We sing the highest praise to you. Oh, we sing hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Oh, we sing hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Oh, we we sing hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Oh, we sing hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Oh, we sing hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. For who you are, Yahuwah, our great power, we sing the highest praise to you. For who you are, Yahuwah, our great power, we sing the highest praise to you. For who you are, Yahuwah, our great power, we sing the highest praise to you. For who you are, Yahuwah, our great power, we sing the highest praise to you. Oh, we sing hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Oh, we sing hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Oh, we sing hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Oh, we sing hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Oh, we sing hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Oh, we sing hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Baruch Abba Yahuwah for being able to be in his presence one more time, to come back to be with you, for the second part of our Shabbat class. We want to begin in chapter 1 of Malachim, which is Kings. We want to start with verses 1, and we're going to read all the way to verse 31. Let's begin by reading 8 verses, please. 572. We're talking about the life of Dawood in Malachim Aleph, chapter 1, verses 1 to 31. And to do so, I pray everyone thus far has had an exciting and a restful time thus far during this time of Shabbat. Mm-hmm.
Malachim Aleph, chapter 1, 3, verse 1. Now King Dawood was old and stricken in years, and they covered him with clothes, but he could not get warm. Therefore his servants said to him, Let there be sought for my master a king, a young virgin, and let her stand before the king, and let her cherish him, and let her lie in your bosom, that my master the king may get warm. So they sought for a fair damsel throughout all the coasts of Yasharal, and found Abishag, a Shunammite, and brought her to the king. And the damsel was very fair, and cherished the king, and ministered to him, but the king knew her not. Then Adoniah, the son of Haggith, exalted himself, saying, I will be king, and he prepared him chariots and horsemen, and 50 men to run before him. And his father had not displeased him at any time in saying, Why have you done so? And he also was a very goodly man, and his mother gave him birth after Absalom. And he conferred with Joab, the son of Zeruiah, and with Abiathar in the kitchen. The Cohen, and they followed Adoniah, helped him. But Zadok the Cohen and Benaiah, the son of Yahuiada, and Nathan the prophet, and Shemaiah and Rei, and the mighty men which belonged to Dawood were not with Adoniah. And it is so.
And it is so. He was 70 years. He came to the throne at the age of 30 and reigned 40 years. Now you have to understand what it means he was well up in age. Doesn't mean that he was old, but he was up there. He was more mature than before. Stricken in years, 70 is not an extremely advanced age, but the many years he had waged war exhausted and prematurely aged him. Now, I want to take a sidebar real quick. This is why it is important that we govern our lives accordingly. He was still a young man, but war can exhaust you, especially how you engage war, how you fight certain battles, and how you do certain things is important to how we, and so it is important that we understand that basically waging war, and then you have to understand the sin he committed. He killed a man, an innocent man, and so I believe this is also a part of that because of what he had done. Now they covered him with clothes, but he could not get heat. His body could not. He just could not hold heat. In other words, you know how when you hear people that are older that say, you know, they get a chill and they just, there's nothing that can be done to cause them to warm up or for them to get heat. And so they go and they get a young virgin. Her virginity heats her flesh. Her natural warmth would be reinforced by mutual desire when they were together. And this would engender natural warmth in him. What they were trying to do, once again, they were trying to heat his flesh up. That's what they were trying to do. But you have to understand, when a person is exhausted and a person is tired, there are some means and methods that just don't work anymore. Are you following me? Yes. Companion. This is a source of warmth. And she will be a prophet, as the verse proceeds to explain, that the king may get heat. It is defined as a stewardess in charge of his affairs. In that capacity, she will be able to go in and out without arousing comment. In other words, she had to be put in a rightful position in order to be going in and out of who? Of the king's chamber. It just was not, didn't look right if she was just going in and out without a reason. Right. Now it says, verse 4, knew her not, because as a virgin she would give great warmth. Now this is what the rabbis maintained, that it was on account of the injunction, neither shall he multiply wives to himself, the Brit 18 and 17, which means not more than 18. And he already had that number. So we look at that, it wasn't for that reason. Are you following me? Yes. Now, verse 6, when we look at verse 6, it says, and his father had not displeased him. Now we understand what's taking place here. Then Adoniah, the son of Haggith, exalted himself, saying, I will be king. And he prepared him chariots and horsemen and 50 men to run before him. He already putting his Abba in the ground, and he's not even has not even expired yet. And so with this being done, his father never corrected him. Now you have to understand something. It is not because this young man just overnight became this way. It is because correction was not reinforced or applied to his life as a young lad. Right. This is one of the things that we must understand. You cannot bring correction to a grown man if correction was not there in the beginning. Now somebody would say, well, what we're supposed to do, just let them run off and be knuckleheads and do whatever they want? Absolutely not. What I am saying, if you want those instructions to be adhered to, if you want them to be embraced, it is important that you begin when they are younger, when they are able to be applied, when they're able to be molded. So this is important. This leniency encouraged him ultimately to rebel or to rebellion. The rabbis deduced that failure to rebuke a child leads to his death. And so this child was not corrected. You have to understand, if you don't bring correction to a child, spare the rod, spoil the child. Right. If you spoil a child, you cannot expect them. And what you have to understand what that spoil means. That spoil means when you don't bring correction. Somebody says, well, you know, you give them everything they want. You're supposed to. Now understand what I'm saying by that. You're supposed to give them everything that is needed and necessary. That's right. You're supposed to do that. We're supposed to do that. but we are not supposed to put them in a position to where they feel like they're not supposed to be corrected. And he failed to do this, and this is why it came back on him in later years. Are you following me?
Yes.
Now, he was born after Absalom. Literally, his mother, bore him after Absalom. This was from a different Ema. The meaning is that she brought him up in the same way as Absalom and allowed the same faults to develop in him. This is literally meaning that he was able to do whatever he wanted to do. Now, with that being said, how do we look at that once again in modern times? You cannot allow, whether it's a son or a daughter, to have their way. And we see children now that's 4 or 5 and on up. They are really obnoxious and really what you would really consider spoiled because they don't get reprimanded. They don't get rebuked. They don't get corrected. And so now you have a generation, or you have children that are trying to be adults when they're small. We were in the store the other week, and there was a little boy. He was so cute. He couldn't have been no more than maybe 5, maybe younger than that, maybe 3. Y'all, he had on his little sweatsuit, had his little braids in his hand, had 2 little earrings in his ear. He wasn't no taller than a duck, as they would say. And so here he is walking around talking about, come on, mama, let's go. Come on, mama, let's go. He already had that mannerism to where he believes he's the what? Little man. He's got to call the shots. And you could tell, and he was all over the place. And she, boy, you better come on here. But he's not accustomed to correction, even as young as he is, because he's been exalted to this position even at 3 years of age. So he's now maturing and trying to be something he's not. You still in a pamper or a pull-up. But they put these responsibilities on them. So it's important that we understand that this is the wrong mentality and this is the wrong action when it comes to whether male or female child. And so when you don't do that, and then when they get grown and they cussing folk out, especially you, and they standing up to you toe to toe, is because correction is not there. Well, somebody will say, but what if you correct your children and this is just in them? That's where you have to rebuke the devil and you have to pray and pray. And when they get to a point where they feel like they can't listen and they want to stand toe to toe to you, there's the door. Are you following me?
Yes.
Because these are some things that you have to be willing to do. Because if not, you will create an individual that feels like they do not have to adhere to nobody's corrections.
Right.
And that is the wrong mentality. And this is what Abinah, his mentality was. He was brought up in the same manner as Absalom. Joab, the son of Zuriah, Abiathar, the priest, they were hostile towards Dawood. Ayab or Joab, because he knew that Dawood hated him on account of his murder of Amasa. Abner and Absalom. Abiathar, because he had been disposed from the high priesthood when Dawood fled from Absalom. This is the same reason, and it is added that Adonijah hoped that they would help him to the throne as they had helped Dawood. So you got to understand, when you got people conspiring and people coming together because they're trying to get something that's not rightfully a person's. Are you following me? Then they're going to start pulling certain strings and trying to get people to agree with their power move. This is what you call power moves. Because they start getting the people in there, trying to get people in their corner to help them move forward. You have to understand, in positions like that, the only person that can put you in that position is Abba Yahuwah. Mm-hmm. But this is what happens when correction doesn't come. Right. Folly lies in the heart of a child, and you got to drive it out of there. You know, I know people want to be hollering about timeout and, the government doesn't run anything here. And if you want your children to be respectable and you want them to be Baruch by Yahuwah, you better teach them. And no matter how those big old eyes look at you, and no matter how, they walk up and they do, and you believe, okay, they just the greatest thing eat before sliced pie, they can't do nothing wrong. And then the moment you start seeing them do little stuff, if you don't start bringing correction to that, you're going to have problems later on in the long run. If you don't start dealing with it early. Are you following me? Yes. You start seeing, it's something when you start seeing children, because as they get that little way about them, they get that little sassy way about them. They start, sucking their teeth, or, kind of slowly rolling their eyes, or kind of, when you say something to them, you hear that little extra breath up under their mouth. You know, you start hearing them say little nasty stuff, and you start thinking, okay, you know, they just a child. No, 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 no. You better deal with it, because if you don't deal with it, they will deal with you in the long run. Right. Are you following me?
Yes.
That's what a Hob does. When you truly do a Hob, that what Yahuwah has Baruch you with, you will bring correction to their lives. You won't let them go off and be doing all kind of crazy stuff. Like I said, because you don't want them to grow up, and first and foremost, you don't want them to grow up and be trying to take you out, and then you don't want them to grow up being a menace to society, because that becomes your menace, and that your name is attached to that. So it's very important that we understand that. Nathan the prophet, he had prophesied that Suleiman would rule. So it's important that we understand it was already, Yahuwah already knew who was going to reign. But this is where, once again, we as a people have to maintain that, not become complacent. Now you can understand, and I'm sure that over a period of time, he was not just exhausted over war, he was exhausted over how his family had turned out. You have to understand, your son is trying to take the throne. Then your other son come up and try to take the throne. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Now you got to understand that is exhausting when you have your mishpachah trying to dethrone you and basically putting you in the ground, and you ain't even in the ground.
Yeah.
That's enough, because that's not just weary. That's not just heaviness of the body. That's heaviness of the heart. You could be heavy in your heart. And so you have to understand, this is what I believe was also heavy. And so you get to a point where you don't really deal with things like you would normally deal with things, because you're exhausted. This is why you got to shake yourself, encourage yourself, and say, you know what, I got purpose, I got stuff I have to do. And it's not just about me right here and now, it's also about future things. So I can't afford to get complacent. I can't afford to become so exhausted that I forget it's not just about me. It's important that we understand that. Are you following?
Yes.
All right, let's read verse 9. Mm-hmm.
Chapter 9.
Chapter
1, Chapter 1, verse 9. And Adonijah slew sheep and oxen and fat cattle by the stone of Zohidin, which is by En Orville, and called his brethren the king's sons, and all the men of Yehuda the king's servants. For Nathan the prophet and Benaiah and the mighty men and Sulamon his brother, he called not. Therefore Nathan spoke to Bathsheba, the mother of Sulamon, saying, Have you not heard that Adonijah the son of Haggith does reign, and Dawood our master knows it not? Now therefore come, let me, I pray you, give your counsel, that you may save your own life, and the life of your son Sulamon. Go to King Dawood and say to him, Did you not, my master, O king, swear to your handmaid, saying, Assuredly Sulamon your son shall reign after me, and he shall sit upon my throne? Why then does Adonijah reign? Behold, while you yet talk there with the king, I also will come in after you and confirm your words. And Bathsheba went into the king into the chamber, and the king was very old. And Abishag the Shunammite ministered to the king. And Bathsheba bowed and paid homage to the king. And the king said, What do you desire?
And it is so. Now, once again, there are times that Yahuwah will. Now, understand, this is we're looking at this, and it correlates or it parallels with what we saw earlier with Abraham and Sarah. Are you following me? Yes. Understanding inheritance and understanding legacy and rightful position. Who is the rightful heir? Who is supposed to be there? Because remember, when it's all said and done, it is about land. It is about property, ownership, and the rightful owners having what is theirs. That is key for us to remember. This is why the right people had to be on the throne, and the right people had to be in the right position. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Very important for us to understand that. And this is what we're seeing in Malachim Aleph 1 through 30. 1 through 31. Very important for us to understand, once again, if the wrong people are in position, this can be detrimental. This is why when we look at later on, as we begin to see in the writings, when you see Esau, who did not care about what belonged to him, this is why it angered Yahuwah to the point that he said he hated him. because he didn't realize what he was giving up. Now, once again, you have to understand it is about the not just wealth, but it's about land. It is about what Yahuwah has given unto us as a people. That is our inheritance. And when you don't care about it and you're just willing to hand it over to a people that Yahuwah said, I'm giving you to take it from them, and then you're going to hand it back to them.
Right.
No, that's not the way this is supposed to go. So you have to understand why it was important that Nathan reminded her to go and remind the king, because you got to also remember, anybody that reigned in that house, if he would have taken authority, he was going to kill everybody. Because he would be basically not the rightful heir, but he would be an heir, and so his responsibility would be to kill everybody else, and he would leave himself. You remember in Black Panther when what's that boy named Killmonger went in and he destroyed all that stuff, and he was going in to go and do war. The reason why he destroyed all the plants was because his whole mentality was, after me, it's not gonna be no other one. That means that legacy and that right there would stop, and the continuation of that, we know it's just a movie, of that empire would die with him. That's the foolishness of that. It would die with him. That's crazy. So once again, it's important that we understand what is taking place here. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Now, it says the stone of Zohelet with Zakal to creep or move, and explains that it was a large stone on which young men tested their strength by trying to move it. The stone by the flowing water. So this is where he went, and basically to show who he was and his power or his strength. This is why he chose this place. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
In Rogel or in Rogue, that is the Fuller's Mountain, so called because people wash their garments in it by treading them with their feet. So that's where he was also, they cleaned their stuff. He called not, knowing that they were not with him. So he wasn't going to call them because he knew they were going to challenge him. Now, mind you, Dawood is not dead. He's just in his chambers, cold, and experiencing the basically life leaving him. You can basically say that his life was leaving him. He was tired. He was tired. And so with that being said, he's not dead, but this is what his son is doing. Now watch this. This is what one of his wise sons was doing, like the other wife was doing. So how do you get a Baruch out of all this? Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Everybody want to use Dawood when it comes to polygamy, but Dawood was exhausted, and then look how his family, his mishpachah did him in the end.
Right.
Because there was only one that was the rightful bride, or the rightful one to be beside him.
That's right.
It's only one, not 2, 3, and 4. Are y'all hearing me?
Yes.
It's not but one chair that sits next to the king, not many of them, only one. And that's for the queen. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Nathan, he was more concerned than the others on account of his prophecy. Now you have to understand, he was concerned because he understood Yahoo doesn't speak a thing and it not come to pass. But there are times where you have to remind people, like we're constantly reminding ourselves and reminding our mishpachah. You got to remember now, we're part of the promise. We are the promise. Are you following me?
Yes.
We are that chosen, set apart people, and we've got to be reminded at times not to forget, not to become complacent, not to become weary and well doing, because we understand what it is we've been called out of and called into. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Very important for us to understand that. Now, save thine own life, for Adonijah would probably kill Suleiman and his mother as rivals to the throne. That's why he didn't call them. And this is why Nathan said, understand something. If he makes it and you accept this, he's going to kill you. And anybody that would be a rival or contest him being on the throne, once he gets it, he's going to kill you. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
That's important. Once again, you got to remember strategy. All this is dealing with land and dealing with the rightful owners of it. Are you following me? Yes. Swear, verse 13, where he's talking about swear. Go to King Dawood and say to him, do you not, my master, O king, swear to your handmaiden, saying, assuredly Suleiman, your son, shall reign after me, and he shall sit upon my throne. Why then does Adonijah reign? Because remind you, now this is the one thing too, you have to be careful of your inner circle. Why am I saying that? His inner circle was so concerned about getting his flesh heated up that they were not telling him what was going on outside of them doors. Are you following me?
Yes.
They were not telling him what his son was doing, that he was planning a coup and he was planning to basically take him out and take the throne while he was still alive. They so busy trying to get him warm. Are you following me?
Yes.
A great steward or stewards would be mindful and tell, hey, I understand right now you're tired in your body, you're probably tired in your mind and your ruach is tired, but you need to know what's going on outside those doors. You need to get some heat and you need to shake yourself because this is what your son is about to do. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
That's why it's important that you know who's in your inner circle. And those that are in your inner circle are people that you trust and people that know what is acceptable and what is not. Are you following me?
Yes.
This is how we look at Eleazar, right? Eleazar. And how he was able to handle Abraham's affairs. You have to understand, you just don't put that type of power in the hands of a person that's not serious.
That's right.
They're not serious. So it's important that we understand the impact that this would have had not Nathan been stirred and saw and was ready to bring correction. Are you following me?
Yes. Yes.
All right. Nathan knew since he had heard it many times from her, why did Dawood swear? Because when their first child died, Bathsheba complained that even if she had a surviving child, he would be insulted by his brethren as the fruit of sin. For that reason, she was unwilling to have more children. Therefore, Dawood swore to her that her next son would be his heir. Now, once again, this is something that the rabbis have constituted into being put in place. Are you following me?
Yes.
This is what they had put in place for basically saying why this was done. And so with that, either way, it was for her and for Suleiman to be on the throne. Are you following me? In spite of how the relationship or the union came to be, it was the will of Abba Yahuwah that they were to be to bring forth. Are you following me?
Yes.
Very important to see that. All right. Verse 16, that what wouldest thou? He asked the question because she had entered without permission, or she was not accustomed to visit him at all. So he understood that there was a special reason. So when you look at verse 16, it says, and Bathsheba bowed and paid homage to the king, and the king said, what do you desire? Now, I believe this question is, what do you desire? Because once again, we don't know why she didn't go back in there, but I look at their relationship as being a relationship out of a house. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Now, the first time he was with her, I believe he saw her and there was something in him, lust, we could say it was lust, because she was bathing while he should have been out taking care of other business at war. But he looked upon her and he wanted her and he took her. But he didn't just take her one time, he consistently did it because he found comfort in this woman. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
After her husband was killed and he went through what he went through, he took her in. So I don't believe she was a concubine. She couldn't have been no concubine. Are you following me? She had to be a wife in order for this to be done legally. Promises are great, but there has to be legal ramifications to back it up. And so I believe that they became a couple. And I believe if she didn't come in, now let's just look at this for a moment. You got them out there trying to put a warm body to him, thinking that if it's that a young virgin would be the better thing. And did you notice he didn't really respond to her, but the moment Bathsheba went in there, he asked her, what is your desire? He didn't ask her, what do you want? He asked her, what is your desire? Meaning that his heart was open to hear whatever her desire was. Like I said, you better know your inner circle, because sometimes the very people you think are there for you could be the very ones that's trying to block what the will of Yahuwah is. Are y'all following?
Yes.
All right, very important for us to understand that. All right, let's get in verse 16. He said, what do you desire? And so she gives him what her desire is. Once again, it's important that we understand. And I don't believe it's because she didn't go in there regularly. I believe it's because of whatever or however the setup was. You got people over your affairs, and one of the things is, well, we're gonna bring a new person in there. Excuse me, someone that's younger, we might can get his attention. Like I said, he perked up when he saw Bathsheba and he asked her what was her desire. Are y'all following me? Yes. All right, let's read.
Verse 17. She replied, "My master, you swore to your servant by Yahuwah your Savior, your son Suleiman is to become king after me, and he is the one who is to sit on my throne. Now look, Adonijah has become king, and my master the king you didn't know it. He has lavishly sacrificed oxen, fattened cattle, and sheep. He invited all the king's sons, Abiathar the priest, and Joab the commander of the army, but he did not invite your servant Suleiman. Now, my king, the eyes of all Yasharal are on you to tell them who is still on the throne of my Savior, the king after him. Otherwise, when my master the king rests with his hours, I and my son Suleiman will be regarded as criminals." At that moment, while she was still speaking with the king, Nathan the prophet arrived, and it was announced to the king, "Nathan the prophet is here." He came into the king's presence and bowed to him with his face to the ground. "My master the king," Nathan said, "did you say Adonai is to become king after me, and he is the one who is to sit on my throne?" And it is so.
And it is so. Now let's look at this once again. The prophet knows how to, because you have to understand, you got to use wisdom. Just like Nathan was the one revealed to him his error and his sin. Nathan was there the whole time with him from beginning to end when he first got involved with Bathsheba. So here it is, verse 20, and you, my master, O king, the eyes of all Yasharal are upon you, that you should tell them who shall sit on the throne of my master, the king, after him. Because it had already been, he basically just took it, upon himself to say, I'm going to be it. I don't care what y'all doing. This is what I'm going to do. He up there almost dead anyway, so I might as well rule, because who's ruling? What's going on? You have to understand at that time, you have to understand the actions or the consequences or that what you see going on is because people most of the time think there's something that they need to do. That's not justifying what he did. Are you following me? Because he had no right, because it was not for him. But you always got those that say, if it was me, I would do this. If I had this, I would do that. Well, it's not you. Are you following me? Yes. And that was his mentality. Well, he's my Abba, so I should be able to take the throne. He wasn't unmindful that there were other sons involved. But he felt like he had a right. Once again, you got to understand the chatter. You don't know what his mother told him, what his Ema would be telling him. And we do know she was telling him enough to make him rebel. We know that. And so it's important that we understand that we see the importance of following instructions and not letting people come in and just run you over. Once again, remember, Nathan reminded her so that she could go in and remind the king. You cannot, there are times we cannot be passive on everything. There are some things you cannot be passive. There are some things that commands and demands your attention and your actions immediately. And that's very important for us to understand. Otherwise, it shall come to pass when my master, the king, shall sleep with his Abbas, that I and my son Suleiman shall be counted offenders. Once again, we know why they would be counted as offenders, because they would be basically a rival to the throne. And so his desire would be, no, we don't want this to be happening. Are you following me? Yes. Now, but Suleiman thy servant had he not called, which provides that this purpose was to seize the throne. That's why he didn't want him there. It's just self-explanatory, the reason why he didn't want him there, because I'm sure Suleiman would have contested it, even though he was the youngest. Are you following me? Yes. All right. Now, offenders, he will deal with us as persons guilty of treason in that we claim the throne. We will be deprived of our rights. If he is not king, it will be said that the reason is our former guilty relationship. On that interpretation, she may have intended to hint that Dawood would be regarded as the guilty person, but she did not mention him explicitly out of respect for him. Once again, you have to understand, this is all, in my opinion, speculation. Because you're not going to tell me after all these years she's just going to be up there wandering around in the house. And Suleiman is the heir to the throne, but she is just this person that's wondering, and people don't understand. People already knew what was going on. Are you hearing me? When the king unrobed himself and began to fast and pray and cried out for the life of that child, people knew in his inner court what was going on. You have to understand, in those times, when a king would basically step down and tend to his business, no, everybody outside didn't know what was going on, but the kingdom sure didn't fall apart either. Are you following me? And then when you see a new face in a place, you understand, okay, there are changes. She went from being with everybody else to being up in the palace. You're going to tell me nobody knew something was going on? Come on, let's open up our eyes. We know stuff different like that too. Are you following me? Yes. What's that girl over there that got in a relationship with Prince Harry? Everybody looking, the next thing you know, now she over there, what, a princess? What's that? Kate, what's her name? Kate. Harry's the baby boy, right? What's her name? Megan? Now you start thinking, everybody knew what was going on. She's pregnant, about to have a baby. They said she was already pregnant before they got married. Are y'all following me? So now here it is. You know what's going on, and she has been put in the status of a princess, and she's over there in the palace. Ain't nobody walking around acting like, well, when did that happen? You know when it happened. When her status changed. Are you following me? So it's important that we understand that when she was no longer around, and I won't say common people, but where she was no longer around the people that were not in the palace, are you hearing me? And she was in the palace, that is an indicator that her status has changed, and so has her position changed. Right. Then afterwards, she comes up with another child. You know it's by Dawood. Are you following me? Yes. So we see things that are changed. But once again, it is at the time of the person that interprets its discretion on how to define or project what is taking place. Are you following me? Yes. Once again, you have to understand her status changed. He was with her, and though Suleiman was the youngest, this is the one whom Yahuwah chose. It had nothing to do with everybody else's opinion or what they wanted. This was the will of Yahuwah. And this is why he was chosen, in spite of, once again, how the relationship began. Am I making sense?
Yes.
All right. Just want to make sure. Very important for us to understand. All right. Now, so we understand that she was not just there, just walking around in the palace, just to be walking. And lo, while she yet talked with the king, Nathan the prophet also came in. Now watch this. The prophet did not have to ask for an appointment. The prophet had a right to go in because the prophet had what? A message to deliver. And they told the king, saying, behold, Nathan the prophet, and he was come in before the king. He bowed himself before the king with his face to the ground, showing respect. Because he was the prophet, but he still respected what? The chosen king of who? Abba Yahuwah. He what Nathan says in verse 24. And Nathan said, my master, O king, have you said Adonai shall reign after me, and he shall sit upon my throne? He's asking him the question. Verse 25, for he is going down this yom and has slain oxen and fat cattle and sheep in abundance, and has called all the king's sons and the commanders of the armies, and Abiathar the Kohen. And behold, they eat and drink before him and say, power, save King Adonai. Now you have to understand something. Where did he get this abundance from? He didn't have it. Right. He was going in taking. Now you have to understand, because he carried the king's name, until things were put in perspective and changed, he could go in and he could do what he was doing until things were put in their proper place. Are you following me?
Yes.
Now let's look at this. Verse 26. Let's read. But me, even me, your servant, and Zadok the Kohen, and Benaiah, the son of Yahudah, or Yehuda, and your servant Suleiman, has he not called? We know why he didn't call, because he didn't want him there, because they be a challenge. Then you have to look at it, because when he looked in his face, he knew that he was not the rightful king, but he would be looking in the rightful king's face. Okay. Now, verse 27. This thing done by master the king, and have you not shown it to your servant who should sit on the throne of my master the king after him? Verse 28. Look, Then King Dawood answered and said, call me Bathsheba. And she came into the king's presence and stood before the king. Now, once again, you have to understand, this is not confabulation.
Right.
This is not coercion. This is none of that. This is the promise and that which was spoken being brought up and being executed in the timely manner.
Mhm.
Are you following me?
Yes.
He is not being coerced to bring her. He calls her and says, bring her in here to me. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Once again, he understood and remembered, not that he had forgotten what it was he had promised to do. Now it is the opportunity and the time to bring this thing into fruition. Verse 29 says, and the king swore and said, as Yahuwah lives, that has redeemed my soul out of all distress, even as I have swore to you by Yahuwah. Power of Yasharal, saying, surely Suleiman, your son, shall reign after me, and he shall sit upon my throne in my place. Even so will I certainly do this young. Very important for us to understand that he esteemed his word and he didn't go back on it. But he had to be reminded, and I'm persuaded once again, you have to be careful of the counsel that is around you. If the counsel is not there and don't know everything that Yahuwah has spoken over your life or in your life, if they're not there to help, you got to be careful of how close and what you allow them to do in your life.
That's right.
Are you following me?
Yes.
Now, once again, they have been there all that time, and the only thing they was thinking about is getting a virgin to put in there to get his body warm, because he couldn't be warm. But they weren't telling him, Master, the kingdom, somebody already is saying they are the king. That means they basically, that's treason. But they weren't saying that. So you have to understand, once again, it wasn't that he was so exhausted that he didn't understand. It was they were not bringing him the right information for him to respond to. Bring me the right information and I'll respond to you. Are you following me?
Yes.
It's important that we understand that. And that's the same thing when people say that, oh man, they just ain't nothing there. Take them the right information. Stir the right information up in them and they will respond to you. It's important that we understand it. All right, verse 31 is our key verse. Then Bathsheba with her face to the ground and did reverence to the king and said, let my master King Dawood live forever. Now you have to understand, live forever how? Live forever through Suleiman. His act of mercy, his act of kindness, and his wisdom. Let that live on through Suleiman. Are y'all following?
Yes.
Very important. Now, now she wasn't in there, but she had moved away so the prophet and the king could speak. And then once their conversation was done, he called for her, and this thing was done. Are you following?
Yes.
Very important that we understand. Why is it important that we understand? Because if the wrong people are in position, it does not help, but it hinders. Are you following?
Yes.
And it is so.
Yes.
All right, let us look at Metit Yahoo, chapter 1, and we're going to look at verses 1 through 17. We're looking at. All right, let us begin. We're going to read verses 1 through 17. And we will probably look at Corinthians because it's only 7 verses in there. All right, let's read, beginning at verse 1. Let's do 8.
Matthew chapter 1, verse 1, it reads, the book of the genealogy of Yahush Mashiach, son of Dawood, son of Abraham. Abraham brought forth Yitzchak, and Yitzchak brought forth Yaakov, and Yaakov brought forth Yehuda and his brothers. And Yehuda brought forth Perez and Zerah by Tamar, and Perez brought forth Hezron, and Hezron brought forth Ram. And Ram brought forth Aminadab, and Aminadab brought forth Nahshon, and Nahshon brought forth Salmon, and Salmon brought forth Boaz by Rahab, and Boaz brought forth Obed by Ruth, and Obed brought forth Yeshai, and Yeshai brought forth Dawood, sovereign, and Dawood the sovereign brought forth Shalomo by Uriah's Isha. And Shalomo brought forth Rehabam, and Rehabam brought forth Abiyah, and Abiyah brought forth Asaph, and Asaph brought forth Jehoshaphat, and Jehoshaphat brought forth Joram, and Joram brought forth Uzziah.
And it is so. This is the genealogy of Yahush. Are you understanding? Yes. All right. I want to read a little bit of this, and then we're going to read the rest. Now, this is the scroll of the generation of Yahush the Mashiach, the son of Yahuwah. The true name of our Savior, as it appeared before it was corrupted by many Bible translators. The name is pronounced Yahush, and all the points to the correct name of the Savior. Certainly not Yeshua or Yahshua, but these, it says, can be used. Savior said, I come in my Abba's name, Yehukin in 543. We know by historical and biblical precedent that the Abba's name is Yahuwah. Therefore, it is imperative that the Son has the same name too. Yahush means Yahuwah who saves or who is our salvation. The popular first century term Yeshua does not mean the above meaning and is only an Aramaic variant. So we are 100% certain that this could not be his name either. In the first century, the terms Yeshu or Yeshua were used as curse against the disciple of the Mashiach. One such appellation was Yermak Shemo Vistron, which was well known by the Orthodox rabbis, and some of them used this to slander the master's name. It says you will not find this term in modern lexicon or biblical dictionaries, since this term means may his name be remembered no more. We need to understand that short form of the Yeshua Aramaic tongue. This name, hold on. Okay, Yeshua, which we know is from the Aramaic tongue. Now, the name must accompany the Abba's name, which is the short Hebrew parent root word Yah. The Hebrew letter Yud and He make up this word. In the Greek, the name of Yeshua was translated over as Isus and not transliterated. One needs to know that the Greek language has no consonant for Y. Therefore, the switch from Yud became the letter I. This was the first instance where the name was replaced with something it was not. The second instance we have is that the Greek language has no word to replace the Hebrew letter shin. The Greeks therefore use the letter sigma for this, and here we can see it softens the sound from a hard shin to a soft sound of the Greek sigma. Now it's important we understand that once again his name is Yahush. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
And not Jesus. And so we see these things now. Let me see. Now, I'm gonna read a little bit more. The Hebrew wav, which in the ancient script shows up as W and has a U or U sound. This would be paralleled by the Greek upsilon, but it has a slightly different sound to the guttural Hebrew we so desperately needed. The S in Greek was added to give it the rightful feel, but by the time the conversion is done in the Greek language, the name was changed completely from Yahush to Jesus, which is not the original name. That's important for us to understand. Are you following me?
Yes.
Now I'm gonna stop there because it is a whole lot. But that is very important for us to understand. Yeshua, those are not his names. Are you following me?
Yes.
And many people follow those names. But that's to help us to understand that this is his lineage. Now, once again, the understanding of all these names is to bring us to help us to understand he has a lineage. He just didn't pop up out of nowhere.
Right.
He has identified this person right here. Let's look at it again. We're going to cover a few of them. Dawood, the son of Abraham. He is identified as the son of Dawood because it was to him that Yahuwah gave the promise of having a son rule his throne eternally. We know that this could not be King Suleiman, who only had a finite life. So this is Yahush, the greater Suleiman, in First Chronicles or Chronicles Aleph 17, 11, and 14. Mati Yahu immediately connects Yahush to the Torah to show a direct connection with Abraham in Bereshit 12 and 3, and the prophecies in the Torah about the Mashiach. This is why it is important that when we study with an open heart and not based upon somebody's speculations or somebody else's views of who the Mashiach is.
Right.
Excuse me, very important because this is why the lineage is outlined for us and it's shown. All right, now let's look at and Yehuda begot Perez and Zerah of Tamar. The incident that happened with Yehuda and Tamar was considered acceptable in Yahuwah's sight because of what happened to Tamar. You read that when you look at in the writings. Now, let's look at this also in verse 4. And so Solomon begot Boaz of Rachab, and Boaz begot Obed of Ruth, and Obed begot Yisha, which is Jesse. Now let's look at this because many people, even I did when I was in Christianity, thought that we confused this with the harlot Rachab and the battle at Jericho of Yahush, the son of Nun. But this is not the harlot as she lived about 250 years before this incident and was a different Rachab. Are you hearing me? Mm-hmm. Very important for us to understand. And the reason I bring that out is because Christianity tries to throw everybody in the line or in the lineage of Yahush. Right. You know, say, well, he had a harlot in there. That's impossible. You understand? And the reason why I say that's impossible because there were certain things and certain criteria that couldn't be done. All we have to do is look at Wayikra, and it gives, and even in Exodus or Shema, where it tells us the do's and the don'ts, rules and regulations to what is acceptable in relationships and what relationships are acceptable and which ones are not. Are y'all following me? Yes. Very important for us to understand that. Now, Bathsheba and King Dawood were both forgiven for the adultery they committed, and this shows us the mercy of Yahuwah. We even see that Uriah is mentioned as a true Yashraelite, even though he was not by birth, nor did he come from any of the other 11 tribes. He was, however, counted upright, even though he was from a Hittite origin. Now, it's important we understand this as well. Likewise, many Gentiles who are and will join Yahshua will become Abrus and Yashraelites in Yahuwah's eyes. Now, they are not spiritual Hebrews, but they are fully physical Hebrews. Are you following? Now, somebody would say, how does that come about? You have to understand one of the things about us as a people that we have always, before our lifestyle and our culture was bombarded upon, and we were taught differently. Even when you go back some generation, you find that we were always taught to do what? Stick with your own. You have to understand that we were taught with that. So if my grandparents were of the same tribe and stayed together, I didn't say cousins, I said of the same tribe. Are you following me? Yes. And they brought forth children, then we brought forth, and then we brought forth, and then we merged and married somebody. Are you hearing me? Not outside of our culture. Then this is how we continue to populate and how we continue to bring forth. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Very important for us to understand that. Why is it important for us to understand that? Because you have to understand This is how we will be counted, or our people will be counted as the stars and as the sand. Not because we have mingled and mixed with everybody.
Sure.
That is not what that means. Are you following me?
Yes.
Because if that's the case, it would have been allowed when they were in Canaan, but it was not. It would have been allowed when they were in other places, but it was not. So once again, we can't forget these things, and we cannot remove them from their rightful place. Are you following me?
Yes.
Now, it's important. Now, when we look at verse 7, and Suleiman, let's look at Suleiman. Now, we look at Suleiman. His Ibram name, Yediah, means Yahuwah Ahabs him. And that's in Samuel Bet 12:25. The name Suleiman means the wise teacher of Yahuwah. And he was wise until he allowed his flesh to get in the way. Now, very important for us to understand that. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
All right. Now, we go and we read verse 9. Let's get to 9 now. We're going through the genealogy, which is important. Let's read verse 9. And we only have 17 verses. So 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Once you read the main verses, that's, yeah. Are you following?
Yes.
All right, come on.
And Ozias begat Joatham, and Joatham begat Achaz, and Achaz begat Ezekias, and Ezekias begat Manasseh, and Manasseh begat Ammon, and Ammon begat Josias, and Josias begat Jeconias and his brethren, about the time they were carried away to Babylon.
Mhm.
And after they were brought to Babylon, Jeconias begat Salathiel, and Salathiel begat Zerubbabel, and Zerubbabel begat Abihu, and Abihu begat Eliakim, and Eliakim begat Azor, and Azor begat Sadok, and Sadok begat Akim, and Akim begat Eliud, and Eliud begat Eleazar, and Eleazar begat Mathan, and Mathan begat Yaakov, and Yaakov the husband of Mary, of whom was born Yehush, who was called Mashiach. So all the generations from Abraham to Dawood are 14 generations, and from Dawood unto the carrying away into Babylon are 14 generations, and from the carrying away into Babylon unto Yehush are 14 generations. And it is so.
And it is so. Now let's look at something too that's important here. When we look at Suleiman also begot Rakam, and Rakam begot Abiah, and Abiah begot Asa or Asa. Now it's important we understand. Somebody would say, well, how is it Suleiman being the baby boy that he was able to take the throne? This is a question that has arisen. If be king if he is not the firstborn son of Dawood. Now in Shemuel Bet 3 and 2, it mentions that Ammon was the first son of King Dawood. So how do we resolve the problem? This is because Ammon fell in a hob with his sister and did a wicked deed in Yasharal, and it is recorded in Samuel Bet 13:1 through 14. Absalom, King Dawood's son, killed Ammon, who is recorded in Samuel Bet 13 and 29. King Dawood named Aleph 1:29 and 30, being King Suleiman. Okay, so you kind of see how that thing. Remember, after he did what he did, Yahuwah said that it would be in his line or in his family that these things would come about. All right. Now, when we look again, once again, it's very important that we see these things. Now, when they were in, and it says, and Josiah begot Yehochanan and his brothers about the time they were carried away to Babylon, which, according to this, is Iraq. Now, look at this. This is important. What about the curse of Jeconiah? And how can he be in the lineage? His curse was lifted as he repented in Babylon. This is evident from the Talmud. What is what it said in the Talmud. Now let's read this, what it says. And this is written by R. Jonathan. Exile atones for everything, for it is written, thus said Yahuwah, Write ye this man childless, a man that shall not prosper in his yamim. For no man of his seed shall prosper sitting upon the throne of Dawood and ruling any more in Yehuda. Jeremiah 22:30. Whereas after he, the king, was exiled, it is written, and the sons of Jehoiakim, the son of Ashur, Shelah his son, and this is in Chronicles Aleph 3:17. He was called Ashur in prison because his mother conceived him in prison. Shealtiel, because of power, did not plant him in the way that others are planted. We know by tradition that a woman cannot conceive, this is going into details about this, in a standing position. Yes, she did conceive standing. Another interpretation says Shealtiel, because power obtained of the heavenly court absolution from his oath. And this is in Zerubbabel, so called his oath for Zerubbabel. So he called because he was sown in Babylon, but his real name was Nehemiah, the son of Hakaliah. And now this is in 33 Chronicles Aleph 3:17. Notwithstanding the curse that he should be childless and not prosper, after being exiled, he was forgiven, which he had made to punish Jehoiakim with childlessness. So we can see this once again as this is coming forth. Now, the next part of that, and once again, this is I'm gonna read just a little bit more of it because it is really lengthy. Jehoiakim said, experienced changed his nature entirely, and as he repented of the sins which he had committed as king, he was pardoned by power, who revoked the decree to the effect that none of his descendants should ever become king. Jeremiah 22:30, and we can see even became ancestor of the Mashiach. This is in the encyclopedia entry and Yehoiakim 2. So this is one of the things that we can see where changes were brought about. Once again, this is from the Talmud, and I read it to bring clarity. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Very important for us to understand this. Now, once again, as we look at this, look at him again in here. Jeconiah and his brothers, about the time they were carried away to Babylon. Now we look at verse 12. And after they were brought to Babylon, Jehoiakim begot Shealtiel, and Shealtiel begot Zerubbabel. So if he was cursed, how could he bring forth a child? So he was able to bring forth a child. Writings say so. Are you hearing me? All right. Now we read in 13, and Zerubbabel begot Ahud, and Ahud begot Eliakim, and Eliakim begot Azor, and Azor begot Zadok, and Zadok begot Akim, and Akim begot Elud, and Elud begot Eleazar, and Eleazar begot Mattathan, and Mattathan begot Yaakov, and Yaakov begot Joseph, the guardian of Miriam, of Miriam, whom was born Yahush, who is called Mashiach. Okay?
Yeah.
So now we see the lineage of how he is brought forth. And so, in spite of many people fighting that, we have the lineage here. We have it in writing, and it's important for us to accept it. Are you following me?
Yes.
Accept it. We want to be antagonistic and fight over stuff, but the bottom line is Yahush came, and he came to bring redemption, and it was at the will of the. And when we look throughout the writings, it is important for us to understand he doesn't need our permission or our approval to do whatever it is he wants to do. And just because it does not fit your agenda or my agenda doesn't make it wrong. It just means that he is able to do whatever he wants to do, and he does not want it, because you can't fight him no way, because your arms are not long enough and you don't have hands big enough or strong enough to box with him. This is where we have to humble ourselves and truly understand he can say and do whatever he wants to do. The bottom line, and the question is, do we believe him? Because the way we walk in and show that we are him is obeying his commands and walking in his truth.
Right.
That's just the bottom line. Are you following me?
Yes.
Very important for us to understand that. And so with that being said, we look at lineage. This is what we've been taught, lineage. We looked at the rightful person in line versus those that are not supposed to be. And if it's not supposed to be, then you won't hold it long, right? Or you won't hold it at all. So that's important for us to understand. Once again, our theme for this Shabbat was chaos, life of Sarah. We looked at the life of Sarah, and from the life of Sarah, a platform was built, and we looked from also at the life of Dawood, and then we looked at the lineage of Yehud. Very important for us to obtain and hold fast to. He said, if you will have him, we will guard his commands. Are you following me?
Yes.
That is important for us to understand. So with that being said, I pray that Abba Yahuwah will continue to baruch the rest of your rest, and that he will continue to lead and guide you, and he will continue to perfect that which is already perfected in you. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
To perfect that which he's given unto us, so that we will be a perfect man, entirely wanting nothing, being able to stand, and having done all to stand, stand therefore with our loins girded about with his truth, and being able to move forward and be a light, first and foremost to our people, and then to the nations, that we may truly show forth that we are the daughters and that you are the son of Abba Yahuwah. Once again, I want to say to you, may the shalom of Yahuwah be upon you and embrace you on this Layla. I am Aliyah Yasharal, and I am the leader of Messengers of Yahuwah's Kingdom of Break Belief Ministries, located in South Carolina. I want you to remember, here at Messengers of Yahuwah's Kingdom of Break Belief Ministries, this is the place where the Torah does the body excellent. Until next time, may Abba Yahuwah Baruch Atah and keep you in his shalom until we meet again. Also, I want you to remember that you've been touched by Champion TV, a place where the champions reside, and it is so.
And it is so.
And it is so.